Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we have a very special episode for you. This is, of course, the Heart of the World review show. I am your host, Christopher Hopkin, with my other host,
Julian Gorn.
Today, we will be talking about Hayao Miyazaki's relatively agreed-upon masterpiece, Spirited Away. Julian, do you want to tell us a little bit about what is so wonderful about this film?
Yeah, Spirited Away is a film, I believe, released in 1994. Is that correct?
I think it's 2001.
I'm way off. Released in 2001, and it's generally considered to be the renowned studio Ghibli's and director Hayao Miyazaki's magnum opus. And it details the story of this young girl who sort of gets swept up into this spirit world where she is forced to work. And within that spirit world, she goes on a variety of adventures, meeting these kind of crazy spirits of like various kinds, getting into shenanigans with them. And it's also a movie that has, I think, some very strong messages, and just in general I'd call it the ultimate feel-good movie. But
Oh, sure. It's very comforting. I think we'll say that we would both recommend it. We both really enjoy this film. We're sure you've already seen it, but if you haven't, we'll be doing a spoiler discussion.
Watch it.
So watch it now, or come at your own risk. Julian, can you tell us a bit about the plot of Spirited Away for those who might not remember?
Basically, it follows this girl, and she is moving to a new town with her parents. And on their way there, they stop at this what they think is an abandoned amusement park. And her parents, being greedy as they are, see a bunch of food laid out and decide to just eat it. Nightfall comes, they end up becoming pigs, and she's kind of stuck on her own in this mysterious new world until she receives the help of this young man who sort of gets her to find work until she eventually works under the infamous Yobaba, who's the owner of this wash house. She's this big witch lady.
She got a really big head.
Really, really big nose too. It's massive. Anyway, and sort of in this bathhouse, she kind of experiences work life in this spirit world. How detailed do you want to go for the plot?
I don't go that detailed.
Okay.
Because you don't have to worry about it too much.
She experiences work life within that spirit world, and she discovers that her companion who helped her earlier is a dragon, and she falls in love with him, wants to help him, and I guess she sort of gets entangled in this almost like not bureaucratic, in this like plot between two sorcerers, Yobaba and her sister, whose name I forget. Zeniba. And sort of comes to support Zeniba, which leads her to achieve her own freedom by figuring out which pigs her parents were out of all the pigs they had there. And the answer is none of them.
And freeing Master Haku from his, his contract.
We find out is a river spirit.
He's a river. When I saw this as a little kid, I hated that. That made me so mad. I said, that doesn't make any sense.
How can a character be a river?
Doesn't make any sense. Strangely enough, a lot of people consider this movie a movie that can really only be appreciated with childhood. But when I saw it as a child, I thought it was completely horrible. I thought, who could ever like a movie like this? It doesn't make any sense.
I saw it for the first time probably when I was about 14, and I quite liked it.
Yeah, I was probably like 10 or so. And then I did see it when I was like 14, and then we both rewatched it.
How many times have you seen this?
It's probably my third.
Okay, this is my fourth.
Unless I might have. I don't remember. I think this is. It's fine. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So, where do you want to start?
I guess I feel like we should start with what stands out the most, which is the beautiful animation and world that Hayao Miyazaki has created.
Oh, sure. A lot of world building. Very creative mind.
Yeah. I think one of the pinnacles of this movie is just the variety of characters. within this bathhouse that Sen or Chiriho works in, you encounter these like frog spirits, you encounter river spirits, you encounter this like stink spirit who's actually not a stink spirit. You encounter I don't know, this giant like radish dude.
Yeah, the English translation calls him the radish spirit. He's based on these kind of little dolls that children had back in Japan.
Oh, really?
But normally they would look like either a woman or a horse. And so Hayao Miyazaki, although it is named after that doll, in Japanese, of course, we called it radish spirit here in America. He just changed it to look a little bit more strange. I actually wrote him down because I thought he was so cute.
He was wonderful.
We're talking about a great thing here, which is this undercurrent and theme of character design.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of course, it's always essential to animation, but what we're talking about here is just particular creativity, right? I mean, I noted the radish spirit is adorable. The definition to Yobaba and Zeniba's face is just
oh my god,
awesome.
The amount of lines.
It's so ridiculous. They're so like ludicrously expressive, and they both are so like cartoonish. They just look perfect for what they're
And I
doing.
like how one's just kind of like cartoonishly like mischievous, and the other's cartoonishly mischievous, but in like a you want to be friends with them way.
Well, one of them is like chill as hell, and the other one's like
Yeah.
freaking out all the time. It's so funny. But one last character design that I think is really commendable is Kamaji.
Yes,
the,
I was gonna mention
man
him.
who works at the boiler. Very, very long arms. Just really
I
befitting.
think even beyond that, you know, you had like Yobaba's heads, you had
They're
No
really funny.
Face.
We're not also mentioning like the classic kind of like cutie patootie little characters. The baby's pretty funny, but
Yeah, the
when he
baby.
turns into a little rat critter, that's really adorable.
Yeah, and then there's also the little dust spirits.
Soot balls that are on every single thing in the world. You can't have a Chromebook without a sticker of the soot spirits.
I hate it. Nah, I love it. I think it's awesome.
Well, they're adorable in the film. They really don't
They're
feel like
wonderful.
they're made for capitalist.
They're meant to be
Consumerism.
cute.
Made to be adorable.
Yeah.
And hold shoes.
And Cole.
Yeah, that whole scene is great. And we're also talking about the characters, something that is another kind of undercurrent throughout the film is classical Japanese mythology.
Yes, definitely.
That was something people were really impressed by when it came out, that a film so based in folklore, which had been kind of not so embraced in the modern era, could still find so much success.
I imagine especially in like an age of post-World War II Western influence.
Oh, totally. That was an important thing to Miyazaki was, with this film in particular, creating an adventure that was harkening back to some of the folklore that had kind of been forgotten, very, very traditional kind of stuff.
I think that what gives this movie so much life is very much sort of how these mythological characters just interact with each other.
Sure,
and
sure.
how like beautifully expressive they are. Because I think that's what makes this movie for me.
It is explored but not explained. It's
Yeah.
never over-explained, where you have a whole
And I think that's
diatribe.
wonderful.
That's what works wonders.
It's
for the
very
film.
much show not tell, which sometimes, you know, I left myself wondering how is the spirit world like beyond just this bathhouse, but it doesn't explain that, and I think that kind of thing is better left unexplained.
Well, totally. Yeah, I mean, he's just kind of building a world without really shoving in your face the boring parts. He just wants you to get this almost mysterious, but it is really inciting an adventure for the viewer by not telling you everything you need to know. You understand as things progress, and some things you just don't understand. Why No Face loves so much food.
When
Whatever.
No Face gets really angry that Chihiro won't accept his gold.
Well, that one makes sense. I mean, that one's just thinking, man. I think No Face is an interesting thing. He feels kind of, how should I say? He's separated from a lot of the morals and ideals of the story, I think, if you ask me. But he's one of the more.
Well, I disagree with that he's separated from morals of it. Okay, I disagree with
Well,
that.
you mentioned
'cause,
greed, so I want you to talk about that because I don't see that as much.
I think greed is very much a focal point of this movie. It's a massive. You see it regularly as this kind of motif. First, you have a sort of like Yobaba sort of like capitalist kind of control over the people in the bathhouse, which I think is very much representative of greed. You sort of see this river spirit and the fact that them freeing the river spirit and getting resulting in gold, they cared far more about the gold than any kind of like environmental action they had.
It's
You
also
see
a-
the greed being the downfall of numerous characters with no face. I think it's an important theme in the story.
I think you could be correct. I think I didn't see it as much in the parents, but I do think you're right, and I do think that is something that I missed. It is interesting. There is kind of an established symbolic natural hierarchy within the building itself, with Kamaji at the bottom and Yubaba all the way at the top in this just giant house. It's so everything happens in a different room.
Yeah.
And you speak of how that works. I think something that is really important to the film and that is really kind of unnoticed is the amazing background work.
Yes, there's just like a lot of it's watercolored, and oh my god, it's beautiful. I think what especially stood out to me more than anything was in this sort of landscape beyond the bathhouse, where you just saw this underwater train track and just like this vast kind of like very shallow sea, and it was all watercolored, and it was just like eye-shattering,
I mean,
eye-splittingly beautiful.
there's an incredibly understated moment right after they resolve the stink spirit, where they're just kind of sitting. This is Sen and what is her name? Lena?
Oh, I forget.
Whatever. They're sitting outside and they're watching the water and it's kind of moonlight.
Right.
It's really just fantastic, and the focus on those small moments is something unique that Hayao Miyazaki brings and that makes the movie so special.
Yeah, and I think it's also something you see, at least from what I recall, I think you see it more in this movie than some of his other movies, which is part of what makes it so great.
He also, yeah, exactly. This kind of slowness was a little bit uncommon for films of that era. And something that is really curious is the distribution rights for America. This film was incredibly successful.
Oh, yeah.
It was, for a long time, the highest grossing film in Japan until a Demon Slayer movie came out.
Ridiculous.
Um,
Not that there's anything wrong with a Demon Slayer movie, but
well, it's pretty silly. But anyhow, and it was incredibly successful in America. The distribution rights were owned by
Disney, right?
Yeah, managed by the head of Pixar, the guy who gave people unwanted massages. He directed Cars. Do you remember his name?
I don't know what you're talking
The
about.
guy who directed Cars. His name is Richard something. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
He specifically oversaw the distribution of the project. The whole thing was kind of a tenuous relationship,
And
though.
there was, Disney wanted to make a bunch of changes to the movie, right? But
Well, I'm not sure. So Disney did end up making huge changes to Miyazaki's one of his prior films, Nausicaa, Way of the Wind.
of the Valley of the Wind.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that. They cut 22 minutes from the entire film, and changed the title and added male characters that didn't exist to the cover. The whole thing made him incredibly upset, and so during the distribution of this film, he sent Harvey Weinstein, one of the associates for the project. He sent a katana with a note that said "No cuts."
That's wild.
So he was very possessive over the project, and the whole thing did get released in the correct version and was incredibly successful in America.
And I think, in terms of it, the only change really is the voice acting, right?
Well, sure. So we'll talk about that because I accidentally watched half the movie in English. I'm going to talk about that. I watched half the movie in English and half of it in Japanese. I've previously despised the woman or the girl who voices Sen or Chihiro, the main character. But I actually came around to her on this time.
Oh, really?
I thought she was perfectly annoying for the character.
I think I remember thinking that the first time I watched it, but
she was very befitting. She's not enjoyable. She's befitting.
Yeah, I agree.
And she does give it her all. That's really, you can recognize that. Meanwhile, the Japanese voice acting is far more understated, handful less cartoonish.
I think I definitely prefer the Japanese voice acting because of that. Especially on someone like, what was his name, Kamaji?
Yeah.
I think that he in the Japanese version is just
so he's really better in the Japanese one. But yeah, far more understated, which is really interesting.
I think that's a trend often in dubs over Japanese media. Like the Japanese versions tend to be more kind of understated and laid back, whereas the American versions are very like loud and somewhat more cartoonish.
Yeah. So we're running low on time. So should we talk a bit about kind of the moral arc of the film, like the main ideas?
Definitely.
It is a very silent moral arc, which is great.
It's something that I feel like a kid watching it would not understand, but if you're thinking a little more critically.
Oh, sure. Because it's not explicitly above the board.
Yeah.
And that's what's so great about it. And that's what makes it so, I don't want to say adult, because that like sucks. But that is what makes it so mature, in that it would take a certain lens and realization to be able to notice these subtle changes between acceptance and courage, and even just smaller facets that change in Chihiro's character when faced with these more difficult situations.
Right. And I think the movie also has a lot to say. It has a very strong moral message about both. I mean, we already mentioned greed, but there's that, and I think it also has a strong message about environmentalism and also about Japanese work culture.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a big thing that just appears across tons of Japanese films, and
Right.
we talked about it. We talked about it, last episode too. I would partially agree with you there. It's not a focal point, but I do think it is.
I think it's very much an underlying theme throughout.
Yeah, I would agree with you there.
And I'd say it's that way with all its messages. Like, I don't think anything was truly a focal point.
Well, true. So, I mean, when I came into this review, I thought it was interesting considering this felt less of like a thing to be super analyzed and more a thing to be experienced. I think what's so special about the film is the power of its animation. I don't think it's reinventing the wheel, but I do think it is vastly improving it and showing what the prime of the animation wheel is. I mean, this is something to be aspired to. This is what the animated medium is meant to do, is create a story that is so beautifully and uniquely presented with a insurmountable amount of creativity that could be unachievable in the real life.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I know that was a good stopping point, but I do want to mention a couple other things. That opening sequence, the soundtrack to the movie is pretty good.
Sorry, continue.
Oh, no, you go.
I just wanted to say that, but pretty good is an understatement. I think this movie soundtrack is wonderful. I forget the exact composer, but Ghibli often has this one composer, and he just composed the most beautiful melodies with just these wonderful chords and this kind of emotional theme. And anyway, all the music in this film is wonderful.
I think I actually prefer some other Ghibli scores over this one.
I agree. I prefer Howl's Moving Castle to this.
Yes.
Obviously, you have Merry-Go-Round of Life, which is very iconic, and a lot of people would know even if they haven't seen the movie. But yeah.
Well, I mean, what was really noticeable is the soundtrack in the opening sequence is really fantastical. It starts nice little slow piano work, and then it slowly builds and builds.
Yeah.
And you get that great shot of the kind of far off city when all the spirits are moving in. But these wonderful kind of neon colors.
I think my favorite.
The boat comes in.
I think my favorite moments of the soundtrack were actually the more minimalist ones. You know, these kind of like very minimalist, low-key piano melodies that just sort of really emphasize this natural beauty.
Oh yeah, it's very piano based, and it does sound great. I like the little drum sound that goes. You know, that's just a Mario sound, but I think you know what I'm talking about. That scene where they visit Zeniba's house, I really like that scene. It's just really relaxing.
I love that whole sequence, and I like how one thing I especially noticed on the train was I really liked how the people on the train just seemed like these kind of like businessmen whose faces you don't even
Kind of
see.
lost.
Just sort of lost. And it's very much contrasted with this diverse cast of characters that is Sen, the baby, the bird, and No Face.
That's fantastic. That's a really great insight.
I think also, you know, I want to touch on this a bit more, just give some examples. But throughout the movie, I think characters are a lot of characters' identities are solely based on their work. And it feels like there's this theme of people being reduced to nothing but their job. And it feels so incredibly prevalent. You have, you know, Kamaji is solely the boiler guy. Yobaba, what she does, she literally takes people's names, takes their identities, and replaces them with new ones for the purpose of them being better laborers, you know? And I think that, you know, that scene on a train with sort of these, like, faceless businessmen is really just sort of the epitome of that and shows how underlying it is.
That's great. Yeah, I think you're right. That's a great insight. It's just like Taxi Driver.
And also, you know, want to touch a little bit more on environmentalism. There were definitely strong examples throughout the film, most notably the stink spirit, where this river spirit, who represented a river, was clogged up with so much gunk that he became a undesirable stink spirit whose natural beauty and power was just sort of destroyed. And then obviously there's also Haku, that's his name. Haku, I forgot his name, who's another river spirit who sort of lost his identity, partially because his name was stolen by Yobaba, but I think that's representative of the fact that he was actually canonically covered over and built over and sort of like lost to this ever creeping presence of industrialization.
Totally. All right. Well, that's pretty solid. I think we both love this movie.
Yeah. Want to give it a rating?
If you want to do ratings, we'll do ratings. Yeah.
All right. I give it a 9 out of 10.
I'll have to agree. What is your favorite like Ghibli product? Is this your?
I prefer Howl's Moving Castle.
Okay, I think I am a Spirited Away head. I think I am.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think Howl's Moving Castle is really where you see Ghibli art shine through the most, which is what makes it so
Well, the
special
art
to me.
direction in that is definitely, I think, a little bit. I don't know. The art direction in that is really, really fantastic. But there's just something. It's so solid about Spirited Away. It does feel like so canon. All right. Well, if you have anything else, have you seen anything else good? We've been gone for 3 weeks again.
I haven't had too much opportunity to watch stuff recently. I saw To Live. If you're a junior here at SHS, there's a good chance you've seen it. But if you haven't, it's a really good movie.
By the same guy did Hero,
Yeah.
Zhang Yimou, I believe is his
Chinese
name.
director.
He's one of the few mainland directors.
Which is interesting because this film was actually banned for a little bit.
Well, that makes sense. So he would constantly switch between the government would come to his doorstep, literally drop him like a letter that was just like make a movie pro China.
Yeah.
And then he would be allowed to make some of these more artistic, emotive portraits that he wanted to.
Right.
And he's been doing that for a long time.
Yeah, and this film it details the life of this family under Mao, or I guess not both. Well, it details their life from I think like, if I had to guess, 1940 to or 1946 to like sometime in the 70s, and just sort of how this authoritarian presence has an effect on a regular family, and sort of really shows the way in which, you know, governments will oppress, but people will always find ways to adapt, you know?
Totally. Two things I wanted to mention. So, did we talk about Takashi Ito last
I think
episode?
I don't remember.
Well, I'll keep it short in case we did. But he is this incredible experimental creator. Japanese.
Oh, I think we did.
Okay, then I won't talk about him. But really great. And I saw another one of his films, actually. I saw a film called Dizziness, which is about a woman who kills herself. But it is a really moving and really, really interesting way of presenting that and that idea in a short time span. I mean, he's just the king of it.
King of the jungle.
And I also wanted to mention, it's so like typical, it's so boring. But I watched a video essay about this Doom mod called myhouse.wad. It's a really interesting thing. I would recommend. Of course, I'm not the king of the subject, but I would recommend you experience it because it seemed like a really cool thing to experience. I watched the video essay about it by, I think the name is Power Pack. And it's a fine enough essay that really describes and catalogs the experience and the details of the entire work. But it is a really curious thing.
Yeah.
Very
Definitely.
kind of puzzle box based. I don't know. That stuff always just really interested me.
Yeah.
And if we want to mention one last thing, we both just saw Close Up.
Yeah. It was good.
Abbas Kiarostami, famous Iranian director.
It was sort of this picture of this. It was just, I guess it's like a semi-biography, semi-documentary about this dude who gets put on trial for fraud because he was impersonating a famous Iranian filmmaker.
And then you were subsequently impersonated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Wait, I don't get it.
Because you were impersonated. Somebody stole your identity?
Oh, yeah. That's funny.
I think it's a good piece of irony.
That is a really.
I feel bad for you. It's terrible.
No, I don't care. You can laugh at it.
But I mean,
it's really funny.
To think that we came out of a movie about somebody impersonating someone else, and then you immediately had somebody else on Instagram attempting to pretend like they were you.
For those of you who don't know, which is probably, I don't know how many of you, but
I mean, I just described it, but
yeah, my Instagram account, someone made an account that was mimicking my account and
someone impersonated you.
Followed like 1,300 people and like asked all of them to give them their phone number.
That is so massive.
I think the account got banned, so that's good. But
well, Close Up itself is a pretty good movie. We'll have to recommend it, but yeah. All right. Well,
Yeah.
Are we finished here? Do you want to wrap this bad puppy up?
Yeah. I will also just say I've been playing Sekiro. Really good game. Yeah.
Next.
Wait. One more thing.
Hi.
We would like to thank Will and Brian.
Oh, I was gonna do that after, but
Oh, okay.
no, please do it.
Oh, okay. We would like to thank Will and Brian. They have been working on this show since the start. They're here every day. Will is graduating, so he's here right now, actually, but he won't be in future episodes.
Giving a big thumbs up. Big strong man.
And Brian is working, so unfortunately he might not be able to work with us on future episodes, but they've really been important to having this show running, and we've really enjoyed working with them.
Yeah, we thank them for their work. They're great guys, and yeah, they've done a lot for this show so far. And we got to thank our showrunner Dan.
Yeah, of course.
Before you go, next episode, we're doing our very exciting big blowout episode. We're doing the Oscars. That's right. We got the Oscar fever 1 to 3 months? 3 months. 3 months. Is it 2 or 3 months after the Oscars?
I think it was in January, right?
It's not in January.
Was
It's like months after January.
Was it in March? Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
man.
I think you might be
Who
right.
cares? No one cares.
Okay, he's nodding at us. 2 months of Oscar fever. We gotta get rid of it. So next episode, we're gonna have a guest on. We'll be giving out our personal Best Picture awards and telling you how the Oscars turned out. For those of you who like to follow along, we would recommend that you study up on the cinema from 1927 to 1928. But Our Oscar episode will be the next episode. We're very excited. This will be a big episode, and we'll be transitioning to be a little bit more free form and a little more artistic with some of our choices.
Indubitably.
I'm very excited to see what will come of us. But, ladies and gentlemen, the show can only go up. So, thank you for watching, and we will see you on the come up.
Yeah.
Bon voyage.
Adios, amigos.
Oh, I should have done it that. It's okay.
Oh.